Welcome to the Sages of Industry podcast with your host, Lynne Brodie. With 30 plus years of Fortune 20 experience, Lynne specializes in strategic activation flow for cognitive peak potential. Each episode features conversations with leaders who have built products and services that simultaneously serve clients, engage employees, and solve real-world problems. Will you be the next global change maker? Subscribe for the latest episodes, and don't miss Lynne's monthly solo series, The Ripple Effect, designed to activate your flow zone for imagination, innovation, and measurable impact. Now let's join Lynne and today's extraordinary guest.
Welcome to the Sages of Industry podcast, where I'm talking with leaders that bring outstanding innovations to the world. While you're listening, think of ways you too can spark ideas for business for world good. Today's guest is Kimberly Haley-Coleman. She's the founder and executive director of GlobalWare, a U.S. and Canada-based nonprofit that leads and mobilizes volunteers for short-term service projects over 25 countries since the year 2000. With a background in international business development and finance, she previously held leadership roles at global firms including CNBC.com, Space Services International, and InvestTools. Kimberly holds an MBA in International Business, an MA in Art History, and a BA from Emory University. A multiple patent holder, SMU guest lecturer, and recipient of the Texas Business Hall of Fame Award and longtime Hall of Fame member, chairman of the executive board for the International Volunteer Program Association, and actively engaged with organizations like Building Bridges Coalition and United Nations ESOC Consultative Status Committee, and variety of other nonprofit boards focused on international service, community development, and environmental improvement. Kimberly, welcome to the show.
Lynne, it is such a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. I love what you do and what it is that you offer. I've been looking into it since 2014. Sometimes everything's just really booked. Kimberly offers in GlobalWare voluntourism. And that's a term a lot of people, haven't really heard of yet, but it's the best of both worlds. You sign up for trips and you would do the normal touristy type of things part of the time. And the other part of the time, you would volunteer your time to these countries and projects, whether it be helping to build a school or all kinds of things. So I'm going to have Kimberly talk about that because she's the expert and she's been doing it for a long time. And so, but if you can start with your story of how did you choose this idea, creation, invention, or did it choose you?
It's funny, a little of both, a lot of the latter without, I didn't have the foresight years before I did this, that this was going to be my life's calling. So I took a really circuitous route. My background was certainly lots of different places. And it was kind of incidental because I found myself traveling a lot for work internationally. And after having done all of the traditional touristy things, when I'd be in a country over the weekend, I wanted to find some way of doing something different and meaningful with my free time. And that's when I started seeking out, can I go to Habitat for Humanity? I looked at all sorts of different nonprofits. And the thing is, they're really not set up for short term. Anybody will take you if you're willing to give them 6 weeks, 8 weeks, because that way, whatever time they've spent training you will be worth it in a certain really bare bones way of looking at it. But most people living and working in North America can't take 6 to 8 weeks unless you're a student or a retiree. And at the time I wasn't. So I started creating my own service opportunities. And I just found, like most everyone does, that there's something about when you're genuinely serving with someone, it reconnects you to joy and meaning. And so while there will always be room, need, and desire to have traditional tourist experiences, going to churches and museums and often on tourist buses and trains, all of that. There's something different that happens when you spend time side by side with someone in another culture as equals and are looking at life through their perspective and getting to know what their challenges are, what their guiding life philosophies are. And in addition to, yes, it helps and serves the local community, but just as importantly, it really enriches and expands the brains and hearts of the people who are traveling to that location. And they're designed, again, to be short-term projects that we can finish. You had mentioned schools. We do mainly small scale because these are small teams, 6 nights, 7 days, usually over, 4th of July, Thanksgiving, President's Day. We know people don't have a lot of time to give. And we, as you said, incorporate all the cultural things that people are going to want to see. But we are also, installing floors in the homes of single moms in Guatemala, concrete foundations. And we are assembling and distributing wheelchairs to landmine victims. We're building wattle on top style homes in Kenya. And kind of the key piece to all of this is we're set up for people who don't know anything about this, who don't speak the language, who've never touched a project like this before, who know nothing about the culture, not what to eat, how to behave, none of it. So our real structure is to be with open arms, shepherding people through this process that may not have the time to figure out how to do it on their own. And they get to write off the cost of the experience because they're carrying out the work of our 501c3. So no one ever does it for that, but it is a nice little perk. Yeah. And the programs are roughly $1,700. So I'd say they're nowadays cheaper than a traditional tourist experience. It includes, food, accommodations, our bilingual coordinator, bottled water, airport transfers, everything except, we're not staying in the Ritz-Carlton. We're staying in mid-range, relatively modest accommodation. We do have running water, electricity, flushing toilets, locking, all of those things. And safety is pretty key. So we're not just going wherever there's need. We're really having to combine a variety of safety, culturally expansive, interesting places that are interested in working with us. So that's a little bit about what we do and how we do it.
So when people would go to your website, there would be a drop-down menu that they could choose a country and then see that the projects are associated with it.
That's
and then
just
also,
like that.
Right. And then also the tourist destinations that they will be able to go to. So like if they choose Peru, I don't know if you offer it, but everybody wants to go to Machu Picchu. So there's Machu Picchu and then there's the other part to it and whatnot. Yeah. A lot of people, there are many people that have heard of this, but there are many that are learning of it and becoming aware of it and don't realize that then there's the two parts and they're like, wow, this is just so perfect because, I think that it gives a lot to both the marketplace and humanity. But what was your hope that it would bring to the marketplace and the humanity? And do you track it like that of how you're evolving different places from your projects?
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned there are people who are familiar with this kind of thing and probably through, their churches that have mission trips. They might be familiar with the Peace Corps that's 27 months and so on. And so we are very different in that respect. But in terms of tracking, we aren't as spreadsheet focused. This is in a very AI heavy world. We are kind of the opposite. We're heavy touch because we're doing everything with our hands, with people, talking to them. And if you call our offices, there's a human being that answers. I don't know if that'll ever change, but so in a similar way that I began with that, I didn't necessarily set out with the end in mind. It was more that when I started doing this, I realized that what was happening to me, and when I would tell other people about it, they all seemed really enthusiastic and wanted to do it and would come with me. And that was more how it came about. And I realized that I was doing something different for people than what they were otherwise offered with their free time. Most of us have obviously served in a variety of capacities. It could be their church or the local community center, a girls' house, any number of philanthropic organizations, of course. And that's really where people should start, right? Is making sure that their neighbors are okay and that their communities are okay, and that if they have capacity beyond that to look beyond whatever borders define them, that that takes your brain and your heart to a new level in a way that over time was clear just was hard to do otherwise. If you're finding yourself in a place where, if you're going to a cubicle or an office or on Zoom all day, every day, and you're basically going within a 3 to 5 mile radius from your work to your grocery store to wherever, it's easy to not see how that routine is impacting your day-to-day decisions, how much of what we do is on autopilot. And that if you go to a place where all of a sudden the people around you, what they're wearing, the foods you're smelling, the architecture you're seeing, even the decision-making foundations of a place are different, all of a sudden you're able to see your own life with a new lens and realize that so much of what we do is an unconscious choice. And once you realize that, you can make changes to your own life that will increase your joy. And again, I've seen that it's a really fast route to getting there and to reconnecting to humanity in a way that can, again, be hard in our world of screens and AI, and to restore your feeling of not just connectedness to it, but empowerment, that you really don't have to be a rocket scientist to make a really positive impact for someone. Yeah.
That's true. That is really true. And so it sounds like whether you were looking to solve a world problem or it evolved into that, or maybe maybe a combination of both, that through what it is that you offer, it's helping so many people on all aspects kind of the spectrum. And I love, that's why I started this podcast. I love these kinds of businesses that, don't just look at, even though you're a nonprofit, don't just look at the profit part of it, but that have combined serving clients, engaging employees, and solving a world problem. And, there's not as many businesses out there as you would think that really do that. Probably more on the nonprofit side, I would say, fulfill that model. It's my hopes through leaders, listening to the podcast and sparking ideas, that they can come up with ideas to be able to have some type of business that fulfills all of that, and be more of like a conscious capitalism or conscious culture cultivator in what it is that they bring to the world. It's kind of like I call it, most companies don't follow through on their golf swing. They create the product. They have employees that aren't really fulfilled about being there because they're not in their purpose. They don't feel that they're contributing in a massive way. And more, of course, with people around the globe feeling this way. So this is really wonderful. And so I talked a little bit in your background that you're in 25 different countries, but who are kind of your typical clients that come to you in who you serve on, I guess, both sides that want to go to these countries?
Yeah. Okay. So that's such a good question, and it also ties in with what you were mentioning about conscious capitalism, because our typical volunteer that would come with us, the participant, While it is all over the map and seriously all ages, they tend to, unfortunately, be people who have more resources, who have a passport and $1,600 to spend on vacation. That's not everybody, of course. And it's a lot of employees. One of the biggest trends we've seen are employers allowing their employees to choose what charitable organizations they want to support. So whereas in yesteryear, if you worked for a company, everyone may support one thing, like United Way, for example, or have a giving day, or wherever where everybody's coming doing a shoreline cleanup or that kind of thing. Now, a whole lot of employers will allow people to elect to use their contribution matching on a program like this. So if they feel called to help single moms in Guatemala or help someone in Romania or Laos or Cambodia or whatever, that they have more ability to either connect to their own heritage or their own specific cause. So we're seeing a big increase in that. Employers that realize that kind of avenue where they're allowing, volunteer paid days off to where they don't even have to take as many days off, all sorts of different mechanisms for it. That it's great PR for the company. It's a great recruiting and retention component, particularly for millennials, and that it's a non-taxable benefit to the employee. And of course, it's a benefit to our recipient community. So in that sense, and a tax write-off. So it's win. It's an unusual, kind of complicated to understand when you first hear it, concept. And even though there are, those words, voluntourism, volunteer vacation, service vacations, are all words people use, we still struggle with what are the best words to use, because some of those words imply it's one way. And really, our participants are getting as much or more. So we still don't know the right, most accurate way of calling this experiential learning impact service that's happening. But our typical volunteer is now becoming more and more corporate. And it's often quite common where there is one contact or decision maker that is acting on behalf of either fellow employees. It might be somebody in the CSR department. It could be in, an impact department. It could be the head of a book club or an athletic club. So it's, or even a parent or a grandparent bringing a child. Usually there's one person bringing others that is our primary contact. And that is important because it means how we are set up is knowing that a whole lot of our participants don't bother to read any of our preparatory materials. We have podcasts and videos and orientations that we would love for everybody to read. But we obviously know over time that a whole bunch of people don't. And so we're set up to, hey, you're going to arrive with a suitcase of a couple of T-shirts and shorts, and we're going to get you through it. Outside of that, we'll teach you a lot just by showing up, and we're prepared for that. And while ideally everybody would live for 2.5 years in the Peace Corps sometime and get to really live a culture, this is fitting and that niche where people may not have that time, either because they've got kids or mortgage or jobs that won't allow that kind of time. But our participants really do vary. And when I say vary, I mean, there are parents who bring 1.5-year-olds and they're 94-year-old parents. And actually some of the more interesting growth and experiences we've seen are with those kids, with a 12-year-old who might be reluctantly going, wait, we're not going to Cancun on the beach. We're going to be installing I'm not in they get there and their brain chemicals, everything changes because they see it. All of a sudden they're off their screens for a while and they're getting to see how life is for the local community members and really treasure what it is to turn on a faucet and not have to pump water if you're on a work site, what a difference that makes. And then seeing the joy that can be had when you aren't in front of your screen, and you can tell somebody that, but until you're doing it, it's really hard. And I think people have visions. There has been some irresponsible what I'd call poverty tourism, where people are taking tourists to poor areas to take pictures with poor people for some kind of, virtue
Oh,
signaling on social media.
geez, that's
That
terrible.
it is terrible, but I also think, particularly in millennials, they've got a greater awareness of what they're looking for, and in terms of authenticity of what's happening, and if there's a power imbalance where the project isn't something being responsibly taken on, or not really needed, or not embraced by the community. So we feel like we're really seeing a positive trend in people knowing to look for things being done in an accountable, responsible way, starting with making sure that those projects and programs are run locally by people who live there, who are from there.
Yeah,
You know, and this is
absolutely.
why, our coordinators tend to be, a lot of people are surprised by this. I'd say our average coordinator, well, is between the ages of 56 and 75, and
Mm,
has been doing this for a long time. And they know what volunteers like to eat and don't, and what experiences light a fire under them and what does not. And they are really the heroes of these experiences. They really allow a window into the culture that is rare and hard to find.
yeah, they come with the depth and breadth
Yes,
of their wisdom, their background, their education, them going on trips and understanding and being part of it, and cultural background and everything. So that's wonderful. That's really great. Is there a question I should have asked you, but I didn't know to ask?
that's a good question. You can hear it in me. I'm sure that I could talk about all of this forever. And so many times people will ask you, "What's your favorite country, your favorite project, your favorite program?" And it's so hard to answer that, because so often it's based on wherever I've just come from or where I'm about to go to,
Sure,
and
and each brings something different.
they
So it's
do.
in a different way that, yeah.
Yeah, and that reminds me, like, if somebody were to ask me, what is something that, what do you mean by connected? What is that about? I mean, I'm just playing soccer with somebody. What do you mean? And so one of the first, I think I mentioned this to you when we first chatted, that the first time I gave a wheelchair to a landmine victim. It's usually children in Cambodia that pick up the landmines in rural areas. We're not based in rural areas, but our recipients are. I thought that giving the wheelchair was going to be this magical experience by looking at the child's eyes that was getting it. And it was actually looking at the eyes of the parents, because they had this very concrete vision of what the future of their child was going to be like. And I'm a parent, and I have children that
Mhm.
are grown and out of the house, and to see that change in their faces, that somebody cared not just to write a check, but to show up face to face and share that moment and get to really see and understand the challenges that these parents faced
Yeah.
up close. Because if it's just about efficiency, fine, write a check, send your goods, and don't ever connect. This
Yeah,
is
but it's the
something different.
opportunity that that
Yeah,
they know that is providing to change their child's life.
that's right. This is really as much more. It's more about connection than charity, because obviously we're paying for the materials, but and this is why I go back to, it's what's happening to the participant just as much, because again, you can't just write a check. Go ahead, do write the checks, but you're missing out in terms of a human being if you're not getting to feel that and experience it at
Yeah,
some point in some way, whether it's through
yeah.
globeware or something else.
You get a lot back from giving to others,
Yeah,
and in ways that uh, are not apparent when you're going to sign up to do something until, you're not going to really know what that is until after the
that's right.
experience unfolds, and how it changes your life in a different way as well. So, if if what Kimberly provides resonates with you and you want your life to change in an exponential way, how can they contact you or your organization to get started? And of course, on the bottom of the page will be your website and all the socials, but I'd like you to be able to put it verbally in the podcast here
Oh,
too.
thank you, Lynn. I appreciate it. Yes, we are everywhere you might look if you were to put in the words globe aware, not global, but globe aware. We've got a podcast channel, YouTube channels telling people, what the toilets look like in Northern Thailand, how to fill out your visa going to Cuba, things like that. And then, of course, all over social media so that people can get a taste for what does it look like if I was volunteering in Vietnam or Peru. And we do have a program where we see Thursdays or when we see Machu Picchu. That way you get little tastes on YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn and all of that. So Globe Aware is the answer. And also, if you look up Globe Aware, you'll see our phone number where, again, we actually have real live human beings to talk
I
to.
love that.
Yeah, rare
So
these
you don't
days.
have to argue
Go
with
through a phone
live
tree.
person, live person.
Right.
I know.
Agent, zero. Right.
I know it makes me crazy, honestly. I'm just like, well, that's wonderful, and thank you so much for coming on the show. And to all our listeners, I hope it sparked both ideas in you to want to join in and have this kind of adventure and to give back. And then it sparked ideas maybe in ways for you to be able to start a business in how you can offer something that serves clients, engages your employees, and solves world problems. So I want to thank you for listening to our extraordinary guest, Kimberly, today. If you want to tap into your genius zone and need help doing so, you can go to my website, lynnebrodie.com, lynnebrodie.com, to get my contact information. I'm known for activating in you a new model of leadership. Please subscribe, like, and share the episode with others, and listen to my monthly solo series, The Ripple Effect, designed to activate your personal power out into the world. Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us.
Lynn, thank you. I'm so grateful.
As am I.
Thank you for listening to the Sages of Industry podcast with Lynne Brodie. If this episode sparked new thinking, take one action today. Identify a single opportunity within your business to better serve clients, engage your team, and create measurable impact. Then move it forward. For more conversations with leaders building businesses for world good, subscribe and share this episode with a colleague or peer. And if you're ready to accelerate performance through strategic activation flow for yourself or your team, connect with Lynne to start the conversation. Until next time, lead, build, and execute with impact.